that can do one target to one that can, say, track 3 or 4 targets simultaneously. So there's definitely that. Don't know so much about hacking, but I think we'll probably do something along those lines, because it's generally sort of, we're going to do ECM, electronic countermeasures, so that's all part of it.
Could you tell me more about the subscriber plans? How will the payment work? What should an imperator expect as information? Will we be able to talk about where our name will appear in the game?
Well, the payment plan's basically once a month, and it's going to support an extra level of sort of information and data access, and it's also going to support, in general, greater content creation for the game. So I kind of want to get as much stuff in as possible, and so the more content we can do, that just means more unique locations, extra textures and stuff. So in terms of the name in the game, I think we kind of have an idea of kind of where it would go, but we're not thinking of necessarily revealing it right at the moment, right, Ben? That was sort of the idea. We want to. It'll be a cool place in the game. It'll be a very cool place. Yeah.
Have you looked into using the Leap Motion for modeling ships as well as gameplay? Do you think it would make creating ships, etc., more accessible to the wider Star Citizen community?
Well, I've definitely looked at Leap on a surface basis for the input device, not necessarily for modeling, but for sort of you see your avatar move his fingers and touch the cockpit kind of thing. But I'll have to get an actual build. I've only just seen a prototype build, and it was sort of demoed to me, so I haven't personally played with it. But we'll definitely be working with it and trying to get it working, especially with the Oculus Rift.
How much do you think we will be able to customize our own ship visually? Will weapon customization change the model of the ship? How far will we be able to separate our ship from many identical models? Will we be able to output our own patterns or nose art?
Okay, so you'll definitely, customization is going to be pretty huge on a functionality basis. So in terms of how you customize it in your engines, your upgrades, your weapons, and things like engines and thrusters and weapons all have sort of modifiers that you can add to them, like overclockers and coolers and things that will hide your sort of signature. So I think there's going to be a huge amount of customization there, and there's also a lot that just goes on in the different upgrade modules you combine. So two people can have the same hull ship and kit it out in completely different ways. So there's definitely that. In terms of the visual customization, you'll definitely be able to sort of apply some decals and change some stuff around, and you're sort of considering maybe having one texture sort of decal dedicated to each person's ship, and then they could sort of maybe even possibly upload some of their own custom stuff. But I don't want to 100% sort of promise it just yet before we've tested like how many ships we'll have in one instance and what we could do, because the problem is if, say, you have 100 ships and everybody wants a custom paint job on every one of their ships and they all potentially be different, that's a lot of textures. I mean, we already have on the Hornet itself, it has 27 2K textures. Now, 3 of those 2K textures are the main diffuse textures, and those are the ones you'd be changing because you don't change the normal textures and stuff like that. But it just goes to give you an idea of the memory that gets eaten up by textures on the stuff that we're doing. So if everyone had unique paint jobs on all their ships, then we would probably have a sort of memory issue. So there's probably going to be some kind of limit there.
When should we expect loading screens?
Well, I'm going to try not to have any loading screens. So when you very first get into the game, you obviously have to have a loading screen. But sort of my goal is to be streaming data around and running a sort of in-engine cinematic on the top of it. So like an example of that will be going from the orbiting the planet down to being on the planet and walking around. So we don't let you fly through the atmosphere down onto the planet, but you'll be sort of in orbit around the planet in the space instance, and then you'll give the code for landing, and then you'll start to land. And what we'll do is we'll run a cinematic. It's an in-engine cinematic, and as we're doing that, we're sort of switching in data, so switching in the environment we need for where you're landing, and switching out all the other ships that you've previously had in.
How will the joystick control scheme be? For docking, you need 6 degrees of freedom, but a joystick only provides 4.
Well, it sort of. I mean, it sort of depends on how you kind of want to do it, and also it's going to depend on the kind of joystick you have. So, I mean, also there's going to be some sort of nav computer ship fly-by-wire system will have a certain level of auto docking that will help you out, and some won't. But in terms of just a straight joystick, if we're worrying about the need to roll as opposed to just pitch and yawing, then depending on the setup you've got, that's set up as typically as the roll keys would be sort of keyboard keys.
Can someone please explain how tankers and fuel work in the game?
Well, I think I already did this, but
Well, this guy wasn't awake.
okay.
So you use up fuel flying everywhere, and the tanker is just a method to hold a whole bunch of fuel. So then you can fly around and either sell it to people or
Yeah, or I mean, and also
Transfer
just not fuel, but also liquid goods, and you can modify the tanker to take actual non-liquid goods. So, but yeah, I mean, it's you could if you're flying on the sort of area that you think you're going to be far away from where somewhere you can refuel, you probably could hire someone to be a tanker that would go with you, so you could have a good fuel reserve.
Can I use the Electro skin during combat to change skin with a keyboard button? No messing with menus.
Yeah, we're going to let you assign macros and hotkeys to pretty much everything.
How large can we expect the bases, space stations, and surface areas to be?
How large can we think? What did you say? The biggest or the bases?
The bases, space stations, and surface areas.
Well, I mean, there's so basically the way you should think about it is they're going to be sort of along the lines of what you would get in Freelancer or Privateer in terms of scope. So like a default planet you would land on would have the central landing hub, and then you could go visit a ship dealer or a commodities broker, the space bar, potentially a mercenary guild or a merchants guild, and maybe there's another one or two pot locations. But essentially, you buy and sell and upgrade your ship in the ship dealer. You buy and sell or trade goods in the commodities broker, and then in the bar you're really going to get gossip, find out what's going on, potentially get a mission, and so on. So, but in